nation says Israeli airstrikes are destroying humanitarian facilities in Lebanon. Suzanne Takkenberg is the Lebanon Country Director for Action Against Hunger. She joins us live now. Suzanne, thank you so much for being with us. Just in terms of the level of destruction in and around Beirut, we're hearing that rescue efforts are continuing right now around Rafik Hariri University Hospital, where Israeli airstrikes have essentially leveled 2 apartment blocks, killed at least 13 people. That includes a child, injured 57. Just explain to us what it is like right now for residents in Beirut.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me today. I mean, the situation in Beirut and in fact in the country as a whole is really unprecedented. We're seeing the largest displacement of people that the country has ever faced. And if we look at 2006 and the war that took 30 days at the time, we passed every indicator for that within a week in this war so far. And so right now we're seeing a lot of destruction. We're seeing a lot of panicking amongst the population. We're seeing a lot of displacements again and a lot of fear amongst people as well at this moment.
When you talk about the situation in Gaza, one constant theme throughout this year was the difficulty in getting enough aid and supplies into the enclave. I'm just wondering what the situation is in Lebanon. Obviously, this is not an area that prior to Israel's assaults had been controlled by Israel. So what is the feasibility of getting supplies where they're needed and when they're needed as soon as possible?
Sure, and it's very different in different parts of the country. In Beirut, getting supplies into areas is very much based on the security situation of that moment. And when we do have strikes, there are moments where it is harder to reach those areas, but in general.
Suzanne, can you hear us? Okay, Suzanne. Okay, it looks as though we're having a bit of trouble with Suzanne's audio. That was Suzanne Takkenberg. She's the country director for Lebanon for Action Against Hunger. Suzanne, can you hear us? I'm being told that maybe you can by our producers.
I'm
Suzanne?
able to hear you.
Okay, we lost you just a moment ago. Yeah,
yes.
we lost you a moment ago, but
Sure.
I wanted you to just sort of start talking a bit more about the number of displaced people. We're hearing that over 1 million people in Lebanon are displaced right now. Just explain to us, I mean, obviously the Israelis do issue various evacuation orders when there is about to be some kind of airstrike, but just walk us through where those who are displaced go at this point in time.
I mean, that is one of the challenges amongst the population in the sense that they do not feel that anywhere in the country is safe. So right now we have an estimated 1.2 million people that are displaced. Just to give a kind of perspective on that scale, if you would take that to the United States, that would be 55 million people displaced in just a week. So here, that is 1 in 6 people. That is an enormous number of people. Of that, hundreds of thousands are currently in collective shelters. And a lot of those are actually schools and also substandard and often unfinished buildings. One of the big challenges we're seeing right now is the weather is starting to change quite quickly, and we're starting to see a drop in temperature as well. So between that, the overcrowding that we're facing in those shelters, and the fact that we had a first confirmed cholera case in the north of Lebanon last week, as well as an increase in waterborne disease outbreaks, we're quite worried on how the situation will evolve in the coming weeks.
Suzanne, who do you work with on the ground there in terms of government officials in the Lebanese government? Are you strictly reliant on international aid and charities, or is there work that you do with authorities there to try to help those who are displaced?
Sure. I mean, the entire coordination of this response is coordinated very closely with the government, and that is from the very top, from the prime minister level to ministers as well that are involved. And there is an interministerial committee that we closely, as an international community, coordinate with. And then that also feeds down to the governor levels and to the municipalities. So it is very closely interlinked with each other. And it's extremely important just because of the magnitude and scale. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it's really unprecedented in terms of how much displacement we're dealing with and how severe the situation is. So that coordination is extremely close and very well coordinated.
Suzanne also noted the vulnerability specifically for women and children and young girls there. Suzanne Takkenberg, thank you so much for joining us, giving us a better picture of the situation there on the ground, the Lebanon Country Director for Action Against Hunger. We appreciate your time.
And thank you for the work you're doing, Suzanne. We appreciate it.
Thank you.